My name is Gail Gorman. I'm a grateful believer of Jesus Christ, and I struggle with past physical, verbal, and mental abuse. I will start my testimony by saying I am a living testimony, and I want my story to help those who are struggling in areas of abuse, because through God's strength, I am able to stand here to tell my story. In 1974, I worked at a nursing home in Fort Wayne, Indiana, helping the elderly. At that time, I didn't realize that Satan had his nasty hands all over me. My job was to clean, feed, clothe, bathe, and do whatever needed to be done for the elderly. Some of the things I enjoyed, and some I can honestly say I hated. While working my 3-11:30 shift, I met this orderly, and I guess you can say that we were romantically connected. He always spoke to me with kind words of endearment, complimented me, and encouraged me. All this was something that I needed in my life. You see, my father never spoke to me with kind words or complimented me. So this guy helped me with my self-confidence as well as how to love myself, I thought. At that time, I already had 2 sons, ages 7 and 5, but I was raising them alone. This guy seemed to really care about my 2 sons. I watched him as he interacted with them, and my sons enjoyed spending time with him. We would all go out to eat, school events, and have fun just being at home. This man treated me like a queen. He cooked, cleaned, and respected me. He was the type that would lay his shirt down on top of a puddle to let me walk over it so that my shoes wouldn't get wet. Little did I know I would be in for a rude awakening. 1 year later, we decided to get married, and that is when my nightmare began. One day while I was cleaning the downstairs, my wonderful, charming husband called my name. I answered him, "What?" This man, my respectful husband, came downstairs and slapped me so hard that he left a handprint on my face. I stood there with my hand on my cheek in shock. He said to me, "Don't ever answer me like that again. You can say pardon or sir, but don't you ever say what to me." That is when I knew I was in trouble. The physical abuse was almost unbearable for me and my 2 sons. My husband would come home from work and beat me for no reason, like the dinner had to be warmed up before eating, or he seen dust on the living room table after he used a white glove to check. He would also kick me out of the bed in the middle of the night for no reason. Once while driving me to work, I asked him to pick up one of my sons. He kicked me out of the car onto the street while dropping me off at work. He even lied to my family when they asked about the black eyes and bruises on my arm. 6 months later, I became pregnant with my 3rd son, and magically the beating stopped. You see, he didn't want to hurt his unborn son, so I was out of danger for 9 months. Life for me was a lot better, although he then started verbally abusing me, calling me stupid, ignorant, dumb, and retard, and words that I would never say to a person I loved. And then he would laugh. He even played a song called "Short People Have No Reason to Live." He played that song over and over. I guess that's why I'm self-conscious about my height today. I always knew about God because my parents took me and my other siblings to church every Sunday. I accepted Christ in my life at 12 years old, but at that time I didn't feel like God was around or even loved me. I didn't think about Matthew 5:4, earnestly believe that God exists, that I matter to him, and that he has the power to help me. I felt alone and overwhelmed. I was so angry, hurt, and depressed. One day after my husband went to work, I decided that enough was enough, so I decided that I would end my life. Besides, who would care, and who would miss me anyways? I had pain pills in the medicine cabinet from past migraine headaches, so I decided to take the whole bottle and then lay down and go to sleep. After all, my sons had their favorite aunt to live with, and I wouldn't have to suffer anymore. It happened to be on a Sunday morning, and a church service on TV was ending. The speaker announced that if anyone needed prayer, to pick up the phone and call. Well, I decided that this would be my last phone call. A lady with the most amazing voice, she actually sounded like an angel, answered, and I told her that I was going to kill myself that morning. She talked to me for about 30 minutes about how my 3 sons loved me and how so many other people would miss me if I killed myself. She said that God is bigger than any problem that I could have, and then she prayed with me. She even told me that she loved me. She said, but most of all, God loves me, and he has a brighter future created just for me and my sons. She asked me to promise her that I wouldn't go through with taking my life, and I promised. That angel on the phone was right about the brighter future God had planned, because 1 year later, after separating from my abusive husband, God gave me the most incredible gift. He placed in my life a man that I called my knight in shining armor. His name was David Gorman. He was tall, dark, handsome, with a deep dimple when he smiled. I met him on June 4th, 1981, on a beautiful sunny day. He asked me about my husband because at that time I was still married to my abuser. I told him about the physical and verbal abuse, and he was not happy about any of it. I also told him that my husband would not sign the divorce decree. David said, "We'll just see about that." So David took my divorce decree to my husband, and the rest was history. After divorce is when I was at my lowest point because I struggled with depression, anxiety, panic attacks, anger issues, mood swings, and trust issues. David was always around, and he told me that he would never hurt me, but of course, I didn't believe him at all. If we got into a debate or spat, I would get jumpy thinking that he would strike me. When my panic attack started, I didn't understand what was happening to me. I would walk into a grocery store and I would start sweating. My hands would get clammy and it seemed like the walls were closing in on me. I was so nervous because it seemed like everyone was staring at me. After I stopped pushing the grocery cart and ran out of the store, I didn't go back for about 6 months. I made an appointment to go to a Christian counselor, and God and him and a herd of angels helped me to understand what was going on and how to solve the problems using God as a foundation and understanding his love for my life. David was still there for me through all of my panic attacks, even after I told him to leave because of all the emotional baggage involved with me and my 3 sons. David refused and told me over and over again that he loved me and was not going anywhere. He was like a rock on a mountain, not willing to fall off by a strong wind. My relationship with God started to become stronger, but my prayer life wasn't strong enough. Well, that's what I thought. I would repeat the serenity prayer over and over. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. After repeating the serenity prayer over and over, I started to get closer to God, and I believe that at one point in my journey, he carried me through all my emotional turmoil. My relationship with others were even with another story. I didn't trust anybody. I have never really had a lot of girlfriends that I trusted, so that continued. I would try to start a friendship with another girl, and then she would do or say something that I didn't like, and I would just stop talking to her. At work, I got along fine with my coworkers, as long as they didn't try to get all up in my personal business. I always wondered why no one ever invited me to parties, out to eat, or just to hang out. I really got used to doing things alone, like going to the movies or shopping. One day, I stopped, kneeled down by my bed at home and asked God to send me a friend, and he did. She was from Iowa, and we became very close. We would talk and laugh for hours. She was a Christian, too, so we talked about God's love, and if we stood on his promises, our lives would be so much easier. The day she told me that she was leaving Indiana was the hardest day of my life. As a matter of fact, I stopped talking to her because I didn't know how to handle not seeing her again. It seemed like God sent me an angel to help me through the rough times. David and I were married 1 year later, and our marriage has been happy with a few emotional struggles. But at the end of the day, we always reminded each other of our love, and we prayed together and respected each other. 20 years into our marriage, I found out that I had a brain tumor. God was trying to tell me, but because of my busy life, I ignored the signs of a scratch on my lens to getting a dangerous substance splashed in my eyes. One of the surgery doctors that I worked with told me that I should get my eyes checked. Again, God was there. So I went to the eye doctor. He informed me that during the examination, he's seen something, but since it wasn't his specialty, I needed to go to a specialist that next week. After going to the specialist and having an MRI, the specialist informed me and my husband that I had a meningioma, a brain tumor. I was then told to go to the neurologist. He informed me and my husband that we had 3 options: have a craniotomy to remove the tumor, and then to cut out a hole in the skull to get to the tumor, have a cyber knife surgery to cut around the tumor with radiation, or just wait it out. If I decided to wait, I could go blind, deaf, have a stroke, be paralyzed, or die. After praying, David and I decided that we would have the cyber knife surgery. On the day of surgery, the neuro doctor had to place a stereotactic halo on my head. The doctor had to place the halo on by holding it in place with 4 screws, 2 in my forehead and 2 in the lower back of my head. He numbed the skin with medicine by injection. But while putting in the screws with a screwdriver, I felt each screw going through my skull. That was extremely painful. I felt like Jesus with his halo of thorns. 6 hours later, I was rode into a room with a huge machine so that I could receive 8 cobolts of radiation in my brain. While laying on the cart, I had a conversation with God. I asked him to please let me live, and if he did, I would do anything for him in return. While I closed my eyes, God told me that what I was going through was not about me. He said, this is about someone who needs to see a miracle. After that procedure, the doctor told me that I would have to wait 12 weeks before we could measure the tumor to see if it had shrunk. During that 6 weeks, while I was taking a shower one morning, I heard an audible voice say, "Go pray with your ex-husband." I, of course, ignored that voice, but I heard it again. This time it was louder. "Go pray with your ex-husband." I immediately went to my husband and said, well, I think you better, I told him, and he said, I think you better go do it. I went to work and prayed and asked God to give me strength. After all, I hadn't seen this man in a long time, and I didn't really want to see him now. God did say that we should be obedient to his word. I knew that he had prostate cancer, but I didn't want to ever see him again. I called his wife and asked her if I could come over to see him, and she agreed. I was so nervous, terrified, and scared. After work, I drove as slow as I could, but I still got there too soon. I knocked on the door, and his wife let me in. She directed me to where he was. As I walked up all 14 steps, I asked God to give me strength to face my abuser. I walked into the room, and what I saw looked like a man that used to be in Hitler's concentration camp. He was so skinny and frail that his eyes were sunk into his head. As I walked toward my abuser, he tried to smile, but he was in so much pain that it was more like a grimace. I took his hand and said, "Hi." He couldn't speak, so he wrote, "Hi, Gail." I asked him if he needed anything, and he said no. I asked him if I could pray with him, and he agreed. He had just accepted Christ in his life the week before. After praying for strength, peace, healing, and forgiveness, I told him that I would keep him in my prayers. 2 days later, he passed away. That next week, when my doctor measured my tumor, it had shrunk. I now realize that God's plan for my life is not about me, it's all about him. I'm a living testimony from my Lord and Jesus Christ. Me and David joined GMZ 2 years ago. He was invited to celebrate recovery by Pastor Sherwin. He came home that evening and was so excited about the program and explained to me that I should go because he wanted me to get help for my anxiety issues. I went that next Friday, not really expecting anything. After talking to one of the awesome, encouraging coaches, I decided to attend small groups the next week. Celebrate Recovery helped me with my issues by going through the 8 principles and 12 steps and biblical comparisons in large group. My favorite step is number 4. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. The reason why it was my favorite is because it was my hardest. I never thought I could ever forgive my ex-husband for physically and verbally abusing me. God gave me the strength to do just that, and after I obeyed him, he blessed me with healing. God is so good. He brought us all the way to Austin to be a part of a program that both of us needed. Since being a part of Celebrate Recovery, I have grown in so many ways. Spiritually, I feel closer to God, and I feel free to express my inner feelings without having to worry about being talked about, since Celebrate Recovery is a confidential ministry. I have wept for myself and for others in my small group. I have felt myself be healed in some areas, such as anxiety and physical abuse from the past. Since being a part of Celebrate Recovery for 1 year, I am now a ministry coach. I know without a doubt that God placed me here to help those who are suffering from hurts, habits, and hang-ups. I get so excited about going to Celebrate Recovery on Fridays after working 10 hours. It's amazing how God heals by listening to others' person's testimony and how that testimony can help with your healing. God is amazing because only he would know that confessing your sins will lead you to receive his complete and perfect forgiveness. And when you admit your wrongs and share your inventory with another, you will experience further healing. Please keep my favorite scripture in mind, Jeremiah 6:14. You can't heal a wound by saying it's not there. My life is so much easier since I am part of this awesome program called Celebrate Recovery. God has also blessed me with a whole group of real friends at GMZ and Celebrate Recovery. I now have a daily time with God to journal how I felt about that day and to pray for strength and peace. I also look forward to Friday so I can help someone else work through their daily struggles of hurts, habits, and hang-ups. Newcomers, I encourage you to stick with this awesome program. Realize that you have been hurt, have a habit, or a hang-up that you might be embarrassed about. But remember, with God, all things are possible. You might not want to talk in a small group at first, but eventually you will start to feel comfortable enough to share your story. After sharing your story, you will feel free and less stressed. I don't understand how God does it, but if you give small group a chance, you will be like me, loving the program. In small group, no one tries to fix you. We are there to support you. There is no cross-talking. We keep our sharing 3 to 5 minutes and confidentially our basic requirements. What is shared in group stays in group. God developed this program just for you, so pray about it, and with God's strength, come and try it. This is my testimony. Thank you so much for letting me share. Ministry coach of Celebrate Recovery, Gail Gorman.